Tonight, testimony begins in a federal trial over President Trump's deployment of National Guard troops to Oregon, the latest legal challenge to the administration's immigration crackdown. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to West Coast Wrap. I'm Alex Savage. The first witness called to testify in this trial today was a commander for the Portland Police Bureau. Commander Franz Schaining told the court today he witnessed several instances when federal agents used what he described as excessive force against protesters outside of that ICE facility in Portland, where there have been ongoing demonstrations. On cross-examination, Justice Department attorneys focused on state and city sanctuary laws that prohibit local law enforcement from assisting with federal immigration enforcement. Justice Department attorneys suggested that Portland police were not doing enough to protect that ICE facility, and they say the National Guard is needed to help federal agents at that scene. Now, for more perspective on this trial and the key questions the judge is trying to tackle, I talked earlier with Professor David Levine from UC College of the Law in San Francisco.
The Justice Department's stronger position is to say that once the president declares the need for the National Guard, whether it's Portland, Los Angeles, Chicago, what have you, that's not reviewable, that the president simply declares something and that's the way it is? Or is there room for a court to take evidence and to be very deferential to the president's findings, but is it unquestioned authority or is it something that merely gets a lot of deference? That's part of the issue. And assuming that there is a role for a court to review the president's asserted facts, then what are the trial judge's findings on those issues, and therefore would it be justified to bring in the National Guard?
District Court Judge Karen Immergut, who's overseeing this trial in Portland, previously issued 2 temporary restraining orders blocking National Guard deployments. And then last week, one of the judge's orders was paused by a 3-judge panel of the 9th Circuit Court of Appeals. An 11-judge panel of the appeals court is now planning to consider that decision. The federal trial in Portland is expected to last for 3 days. Tonight, President Trump is pushing his strategy of deploying troops to U.S. cities as he tours Asia. While in Japan, the president suggested that he may amplify that tactic.
We can't have cities that are troubled. And we're sending in our National Guard. And if we need more than the National Guard, we'll send more than the National Guard because we're going to have safe cities.
Those were comments from President Trump made on an aircraft carrier that was docked near Tokyo. In Arizona, a man was shot and wounded by an ICE agent today. This shooting happened after agents pulled over a vehicle along Interstate 17 in Phoenix. Investigators say the driver, who is from Honduras, pulled away as immigration agents approached that vehicle. An agent who claims he was in the vehicle's path and feared for his life fired his gun. The driver of the vehicle was struck and remains hospitalized tonight. The agent who opened fire was also hospitalized. The extent of his injuries remain unclear tonight. An immigration enforcement operation in Southern California attracted a large crowd of protesters today. Those demonstrators showed up as agents surrounded a business in Oxnard in Ventura County. The activity disrupted the day at a nearby school.
To me, it's very sad to see this on the morning when, especially in front of a school for special ed kids, that they stayed without classes today because their school was surrounded by ICE agents.
That witness says at least one person was taken into custody at that scene. Federal officials say they have charged 12 people in connection with protests allegedly targeting ICE agents in both Ventura and Los Angeles counties. Officials accused 2 of the defendants of attacking immigration agents at a Ventura cannabis farm that was raided by ICE back on July 10th. Prosecutors say the pair were members of a rapid response operation who went to that protest in order to assault officers, including throwing rocks at vehicles. One federal contract employee was hurt by flying glass.
Not only are these actions dangerous, they're also ineffective. We have not and we will not stop our immigration enforcement operations. Nothing will stop us. Nothing.
Federal officials say they also charged 9 people who allegedly threw rocks, bottles, and other objects at officers during a protest in downtown L.A. on June 8th. The acting U.S. attorney says people have the right to peacefully protest, but they will face charges if they carry out acts of violence.
We need 5 Democrat senators to pull their heads out of their ass and go work for the United States of America.
Well, tonight there are no clear signs that Congress is any closer to reaching a deal that would reopen the government. The stalemate is threatening to cut off federal food aid to tens of millions of people later on this week. Democrats insist that a deal to get the government back up and running must include an extension of expiring Obamacare subsidies to prevent skyrocketing health care premiums.
Republicans are trying the same failed play that they tried before. Get rid of health care for American people. You're on your own. If you can't afford health care, it's your fault. That's the Republican attitude. It's just horrible.
At the same time, one police department in California is now stepping up patrols around grocery stores in the run-up to this week's expected freeze of those SNAP benefits. Barstow Police made that announcement on social media. The department in San Bernardino County says the additional patrols are designed to ensure the safety of residents, customers, and business owners. Officers will be conducting those extra patrols around grocery stores, convenience stores, as well as shopping centers. The department insists the proactive measure is designed to support the community in the midst of a challenging time. Well, all across the West, preparations are underway to help people in danger of losing federal food aid. Today, Arizona Governor Katie Hobbs announced $1.5 million in funds from the American Rescue Act will go to food banks across the state. Another $300,000 will be put into a program that will give SNAP households a $30 voucher to buy fresh produce at farmers markets. And in San Francisco, the city has partnered with Crankstart Foundation to use $18 million to support residents who are facing food insecurity. Also tonight, we're seeing food distribution sites ramping up their efforts in the Seattle area.
It's hard, and with the prices going up on everything, food stamps doesn't even go as far as they used to either. Things are more expensive, it takes more, so you might have what you think is a lot in food stamps, but really you have half that.
We're in a food crisis. People are feeling it. They're in need of food. 70% of the people here are literally the first time they've ever accessed food through a food bank.
And for more on this ongoing situation, head over to westcoastwrap.com to track the latest updates on the government shutdown and the implications of it for people across the West. Our online coverage includes a breakdown of New Mexico's plan to provide $30 million in emergency food assistance, backfilling those SNAP benefits, at least for the time being. California voters are in the final days now of a special election that could help decide which party controls the U.S. House after the 2026 midterm elections. Voters are being asked whether the state should redraw congressional districts in an effort to send more Democrats to Capitol Hill. Fox's Amalia Roy spoke with voters in an area where redistricting has a strong chance of flipping the party affiliation of their representative.
Recent polling shows Prop 50 will likely pass, and that has some people in some rural communities worried about what that will mean for their voice in Washington.
Then we have this hull, and this is the shell.
Jenny Holterman is a fourth-generation California farmer in the Central Valley. Under the proposed map, Holterman would still be in a Republican district, but she worries what a change in representation would mean for her farming community as a whole.
It's sad that they are really carving out those Republican areas of the district and moving them to really make that area more Democrat. And that's not what the heart of the Central Valley is.
And it's not just the farmers in the Central Valley. The entire California Farm Bureau came out against Prop 50, saying in a statement, rural representation is critical in government. Prop 50 will hurt farmers and ranchers by silencing the rural vote and removing the independent commission from the long-standing voter-approved process. Politicians should never draw their own districts to favor political parties and themselves. Holterman says she's used to larger cities having more say in the state, but she worries Prop 50 will silence the voices of rural voters even more. So when it comes to redistricting, she says it's a fight she doesn't want California to be a part of at all.
We are California, And as Californians, we should not be caught up in what the other states are doing to meander their votes.
Lonnie Johnson from the Fresno County Democratic Party doesn't want this fight either. But he says redistricting efforts in Republican-led states left California Democrats no choice.
Can either fight this, which is what we're doing, and the people of California seem very supportive of it, if you look into the latest polling, or we can do nothing. And we can let them game the system and keep control of the House of Representatives, and there will be no check on President Trump and his administration.
Prop 50 targets 5 Republican-held seats across the state, but that's not a guarantee that a Democrat will win in 2026. Here in Wasco, California, that's District 22, the new maps would make it more competitive for Democrats, but it would still be a toss-up. In Wasco, California, Amalia Roy, Fox News.
Up next tonight here on West Coast Wrap, body camera video shows an Arizona judge's interaction with police officers. Up next tonight, we'll explain what happened just days before she announced her resignation.
And in weather, here's a live camera in Los Angeles. Another day of record heat in Southern California. Current temperature is 77 degrees. We'll have more in your forecast coming up.
It's just something that we've talked, man and my wife have talked about for a long time, that this would be the best way for it to go, and it happened.
Also tonight, a Utah husband and wife brought out a crowd to part ways with their 1991 Geo Metro. Coming up, a closer look at the crushing goodbye. An Arizona judge has resigned just days after an encounter with police that was captured on body camera video. Prescott police officers approached Superior Court Judge Christine Schaff Olson after getting reports she was urinating in public. This happened around 1:30 in the morning on October 4th. Investigators say Schaff Olson showed signs of intoxication and slurred her speech as they spoke with her. Schaff Olson was issued a misdemeanor citation by police. Her husband was arrested at that scene and charged with interfering with the investigation.
All right, this is your citation. It's a misdemeanor for urinating or defecating in public, okay? So you're going to have to sign it, promising to appear in court in about a month, all right? Your husband's going to be transported to the Yavapai County Jail. He'll be booked in there.
Yavapai County Superior Court says Schaff Olson is resigning due to, quote, personal matters. Her last day on the bench is Friday. A police officer is injured and a suspect is dead after a shooting that happened today in Mesa, Arizona.
You know, it hits close to home. In this specific instance, like I had mentioned, officers maintained their focus on the scene. We ensured that the officer got aid, but they also were then still focused on trying to get that man to surrender peacefully.
Tonight, it remains unclear whether the suspect died by suicide or whether they were shot by an officer's weapon. The gunfire rang out as police were investigating reports of someone who was trespassing. The officer who was shot is expected to fully recover. In Utah, a Salt Lake City police officer shot and killed a man after he allegedly used a rock as a weapon. It happened this morning in the Syndicate Place neighborhood. Police say they responded to reports of an assault, and when they arrived, they found a man who was holding a rock. They say the man was standing in a crosswalk when he threw the rock at officers, and that's when one officer shot him. The man was rushed to the hospital, but later died. Bay Area-based NVIDIA is now the first publicly traded company to exceed a $5 trillion valuation. That is greater than the GDPs of India, Japan, or the United Kingdom. NVIDIA shares climbed another 3% today. The AI chip maker is based in Santa Clara but manufactures in Arizona. NVIDIA's AI chips are estimated to make up about 90% of the market, meaning anyone betting on the future of AI is coming to them first.
If any country or any organization or any government would like to be in the AI, they must come to NVIDIA. They have to knock on the door of NVIDIA. And that's actually giving the strength to an American company at the heart of Silicon Valley.
32 of the top 50 AI companies in the world are also based in Silicon Valley. In Hollywood, Paramount is set to slash roughly 2,000 jobs just a few months after finishing up its $8 billion merger with Skydance. The company initiated about 1,000 of those layoffs company-wide today, with the rest expected to come at a later date. The total cuts add up to about 10% of Paramount's workforce. CEO David Ellison says the company has been working to restructure since the merger, and workforce cuts are a part of that process. Wall Street is coming off a mixed day of trading after the Federal Reserve's announcement that it will cut its key interest rate by another quarter point. It's the Fed's second rate cut so far this year. On Wall Street today, the Dow dipped by 74 points. The Nasdaq gained over 130 points thanks to gains by tech companies, and the S&P 500 was virtually unchanged. Let's talk now about our weather across the West, and people in Los Angeles and across Southern California dealing with a second straight day of record-breaking heat. This is a live look tonight at LA, where temperatures climbed to 97 degrees downtown this afternoon, breaking the October 29th record of 94 degrees that was set back in 2020. Another concern across Southern California: the wind gusts coming along with this week's heat wave have some parts of LA and Ventura counties facing red flag warnings for that increased fire danger. For more, let's bring in KTVU Chief Meteorologist Mark Tamayo, who is tracking the fire threat across Southern California and the conditions across the West. Hey, Mark.
Hi there, Alex. Yeah, temperature is definitely soaring in Southern California yesterday, then once again today, as you mentioned. The heat advisory allowed to expire, the red flag warning allowed to expire. So it looks like those winds have been backing off. But as you mentioned, another day of 90s out there, 97 degrees, breaking the old record set back on this date, 1931. The average high for today is actually 77 degrees, so 20 degrees above the average in Southern California. Some more toasty temperatures for parts of the West out toward Palm Springs, 96 degrees. Sacramento, 82, some 80s for Redding, and the cool conditions focused up here, up in the Pacific Northwest. That's the cooler part of the weather pattern. Temperatures in the upper 50s to right around 60 degrees. Here's the satellite and the radar. Not a lot of action out here, as you can see. No major storms to be talking about. You can see this system out here in the Pacific. This will eventually lead to some rain up in the Pacific Northwest, but this was the scene today, showing you some clouds, kind of a sun-cloud mix in Seattle. There's at 58 degrees. In San Francisco, a beautiful day. In fact, today, the warmest day of the week for the San Francisco Bay Area, some 70s and some 80s. And then out toward Phoenix, temperatures in the lower 90s, with lots of sunshine out toward portions of Arizona earlier today. Current numbers, it is 81 in Phoenix, Las Vegas checking in 74, San Francisco 63 degrees, and Portland, Oregon 54. The plan for tomorrow looks like some clouds in the morning for Seattle, and then eventually becoming partly cloudy into the afternoon hours. A cooler weather pattern for the San Francisco Bay Area, a warm day for Los Angeles, just not as warm as today. And then you have the sunshine out toward Phoenix and mostly clear skies out toward Denver. Here's the forecast models. You can see not a lot of activity to show you with just morning clouds up in Seattle tomorrow morning. And then, as you can see here, things will be changing around a bit for their forecast with increasing rain chances by Friday. That could continue into the weekend. So this could be a factor for the Halloween festivities for this portion of the West Coast on Friday. But looks like we'll have mostly clear skies for San Francisco, San Diego, out toward Phoenix and Denver. So here is the forecast over the next 3 days. Those rain clouds do make a comeback for the Seattle area. For San Francisco, clouds in the morning, becoming partly cloudy. A bit of a cool down for the San Francisco Bay Area for your Thursday. Southern California, warm tomorrow, just not as warm as today. Looks like Phoenix will have temperatures in the 80s to right around 90 degrees. And Denver, temperatures mainly in the 50s to the lower 60s. But the rain clearly focused up here over the coming days. Alex.
All right, Mark, thank you. Up next tonight here on West Coast Wrap, a unique way to crush an old car, why one Utah farmer decided to use a massive pumpkin he grew to handle that job. Also, up next tonight, we'll show you what's being done in Colorado that could be a game changer in efforts to help feed those in need.
Feeding people good nutritional food where ordinarily they wouldn't have access to good food.
A company in Colorado is building farms inside of shipping containers. Farmbox Foods is building what's called a vertical hydroponic farm inside shipping containers designed to grow food anywhere in the world. From fresh lettuce in the desert to crops in remote communities, the company says this is a game changer that could help to fight food insecurity.
These are sent throughout the world to give people the ability to farm in places where they traditionally haven't been able to farm. You don't have to worry about a drought taking out your crops. You don't have to worry about hail or pests.
The farms are being used in 12 different industries. One will be sent to the International Space Station for research there. They're most likely to make a big impact, though, in helping food banks and churches to distribute fresh food. Well, President Trump's plan to lower beef prices is facing some pushback across the West. Fox's Kennedy Hayes spoke with cattle ranchers in Colorado about his call to import more beef from Argentina.
Yeah, ranchers here say President Trump's comments alone are rattling the U.S. cattle market and cutting into their profits, even though they haven't seen any additional Argentinian beef hit the U.S. markets yet.
We're seeing about a 10-cent per pound decrease. I sell somewhere around a 600-pound calf. So you can kind of do the math and see what per head I've given up over the last couple weeks. Because it's such a complicated industry, we're not crazy about the government putting fingers on the scales anywhere, because it, in some ways, it's volatile and fragile just as it is.
President Trump announced the plan earlier this month. He says importing more beef from Argentina could bring relief to American shoppers and support Argentina's struggling economy. Right now, the U.S. imports about 2% of its beef from Argentina. Beef prices here at home are at record highs, up about 15% on average over the past year. Ground beef, roasts, and steaks are all more expensive as U.S. cattle herds continue to shrink. But ranchers say importing more beef could make things worse. They say when the market is jumpy, like it's been since the president announced his proposal, it's harder for producers to plan sales or feed costs. Bob Welch runs Sandstone Ranch here in Douglas County, Colorado, home to about 60 pairs, a cow and its calf. He says the price of doing business, from feed to land costs, is up everywhere. Ranchers say they don't have much say over what shoppers end up paying. Those prices are largely set by the big meat packing companies. And the Cattlemen's Association says the gap between what they're paid and what shoppers pay keeps growing.
This is an important time of year for us. This is the annual fall run where a lot of cattle producers are marketing their cattle. In a lot of cases, it's the one time a year that they get paid for their cattle. So anytime you see chaos or uncertainty in the marketplace, that usually means that we are going to see a financial impact.
And ranchers here tell me they would rather see the White House focus on ways they can help expand and grow the U.S. cattle herd, things like more legislation to be able to safely bring in cows from places like Mexico. In Douglas County, Colorado, Kennedy Hayes, Fox News.
All right, finally tonight, with Halloween just a couple days away, here is the perfect way to put a giant pumpkin to good use. A Utah farmer dropped a massive pumpkin from about 14 stories up right onto his old Geo Metro. Alan Gebert has been driving that car for nearly 35 years. He was done with it. He says he always thought if it stopped running, he'd grow a huge pumpkin and drop it onto the car, and that is exactly what he did. Before dropping that huge pumpkin onto his car, Gebert entered it into the Utah Giant Pumpkin Festival way off, where it came in first place. Very impressive. And that video, very impressive. I could just watch that all night. All right, that does it for West Coast Wrap tonight. We appreciate you watching as always. And a quick reminder before we head out, head over to westcoastwrap.com for updates on all the big stories we're following across the West. Have a great night.